welcome to the Facebook Success Series. We've got all of our players on board now. I want to first start by apologizing to all of the NNPA members because I will tell you the truth. Last week after Nicholas hit, my house got turned upside down. We had some water damage, and of course I freaked out and I was not ready for the seminar that we had, the webinar. So please accept my apology. We have a great guest today, and I am going to introduce our Facebook host, Doreen Mendoza, to come on and introduce our guest. With that, Doreen, if you'll just unmute, we can go ahead and kick this story off and get it started.
Great, thanks, Sunny, and we're glad you're okay. We can miss a webinar so that you're all right.
Thank you for that.
I am happy to introduce Mina. She is a consultant. Some of you have met her probably already. She works with the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University, and she works to do a lot of things. One of them is working on how to set campaigns for Facebook ads. So if you are in a position where you're looking to gain newsletter subscribers, you're curious about how to use Facebook to generate leads for your newsletters or for campaigns that you're running, she's going to run through some of the basics on how to determine what your objective is and how to set that up. We don't expect you to be a pro at this by the time it's over. What we hope you can do is start thinking about what kind of goals would be appropriate, what kind of things you think Facebook ads might help with, and kind of get a start thinking about how much money you may want to spend, if not now, then maybe in the future or next year even. But Mina's around for questions later on. The resource desk is open to all NNPA members. And please feel free to drop questions in the chat as Mina's walking through this so that we can get to your questions. And with that, I will hand it over to Mina.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Mina Thiruvengadam. As Doreen told you, I do a lot of different things. But one of the things that I do is I help publishers build their audiences. But I've worked in a lot of different organizations, large and small, and my background is in media. And I tell you this because I want you to know that most of the places that I have worked, my social budget or my budget for advertising or marketing has been a big old fat zero. That said, in the time since I've worked there, I think I've really learned how to make stronger arguments for actually investing a little bit of money into audience development onto your organic efforts. It's really a way to accelerate what you're doing. And if you think about it and you really plan accordingly, you can make it a really worthwhile investment for yourself in the long run. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I call this presentation What You Need to Know About Facebook Ads and Why You Need to Know It. That second part to me, I think, is one of the most overlooked things when people are thinking about an ad campaign. Often when I'm working with publishers, they rush in to spend money before they think about why they're spending that money, what they hope to get in exchange for that money, and how their budget for this particular audience growth activity fits into the broader picture. So I'd love to know from any of you all if you've experimented with Facebook advertising or if everyone here is brand new. Is there anyone in the group who has done some Facebook advertising in the past? All right. Not seeing anyone popping up in the chat. All right, so we will go through and assume that we are starting from square one. So the first thing to know is the reason that publishers go to social platforms to advertise is because they're looking to expand their audiences. They're looking to drive site traffic. Maybe they've sold a really big ad campaign and they need some more impressions to fulfill their requirements. Or maybe they're brand new and they're trying to build a following on a particular platform. There are lots of different reasons to advertise. So as you're setting out, think about what is your goal with this particular pool of money? And that should really drive most of your decision making here. Now, one of the reasons I often tell publishers to start with Facebook is where most publishers tend to find the best ROI. This is especially true if you publish a broad range of content, which really most small newsrooms would fall into this. It also offers access to the broadest and widest audiences. Again, if you're targeting general broad audiences, you want to go where those general broad audiences congregate. Now, this next point is especially important. The tools that Facebook has that allow you to optimize for specific goals. So basically, when I'm going through and setting up a Facebook campaign, it really makes it easy to force me to think through, what is my goal with this? What am I trying to do? And I think that if you're new to advertising, especially, it can help you to think about what metrics are important to you, how to set up these ads, and how to actually get what you're looking for this money. You know, I've worked with a lot of small publishers, and I know even if it's a small amount of money, nobody wants to waste it, especially when there's so much content to be created and work to be done. Another great thing that Facebook offers for local news is geographical targeting. I think that, you know, when you're trying to get that broad audience, Facebook can be great, but when you're trying to get an audience in a specific region, Facebook can also be really helpful there. In terms of the lay of the land, I also found that Facebook advertising is a better deal financially for most publishers. Typically, Facebook tends to be the most affordable social platform to advertise on. Twitter comes in a little bit more expensive than Facebook. Most people, when they see the prices of LinkedIn ads, run a whole different direction. So that's a little bit more about where Facebook fits into that pricing landscape and why so many people do go to Facebook for ads. And when you're thinking about setting up a Facebook ad, there's a few things that are do's and don'ts, best practices that we've learned through lots of work with other publishers. You do want to use high resolution images, and keep in mind that for a platform like Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, those images are going to be key. So really invest in them in the same way that you would editorially. And I think this is something that I often tell publishers. Basically, this is an editorial package you're paying to amplify. You should take that level of care in creating the content and selecting the content and editing for this. This isn't something to just say, hey, ad manager, figure it out. This is something that's really reflective of your brand and is really an investment in amplifying your brand and the work that you're doing. Another important thing about those visuals is really focusing the visual message can help an ad perform well on Facebook. This can be something like a simple crop. I've got this is not a paid ad, but it is for a post from the Center for Investigative Reporting. And to me, this is one of the most interesting examples of how a crop could really change what this image says, how it stands out in someone's timeline, and maybe get them to take a different look at it. So I know that for many of us focusing on words, we think about the words that we choose. We think about how we're editing those words. Take that same care to focus your images, especially when you're paying to amplify them. Now, this third point is a big one. Don't overload your images with text. Images with less than 20% text tend to perform better. Like I said, like you all, I am a word person who tends to shoot on my iPhone. So I often have to remind myself of this. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have text in an image. If you have an excellent quote, maybe you do turn that into a quote card. Just be mindful of this and know that this data is out there. So if you're in a newsroom and you're making an argument about putting, 2 paragraphs of text on a card, this is the kind of data point that you can pull out to support the argument that you're making. Next big one, do preview your ads before publishing. I will tell you, I actually went through the process of buying a printer and carving out space in my small city home for said printer. Previewing things is really valuable. So always make sure you preview those ads on Facebook. You would never print a story without double checking it, maybe triple checking it. I'll tell you now, my best stories are the ones that I print out and double check every fact, every potential grammar error, and everything else, then read it back to myself upside down. Facebook makes it a lot easier to preview, but you still want to take that, that step to make sure everything looks exactly the way you want it to. Okay, so when it comes to advertising on Facebook, you have several different options. As we're going through these, think about your own Facebook timeline and what you're seeing. One thing that I do is I pay a lot of attention to the ads in my Facebook feed, not so much because I'm shopping for things, but I need to know what people are doing, why they're doing it. And I'm always looking for ideas. And for any of you who've been in journalism for a long time, you know that ideas come from weird places. And sometimes they are video ads or carousels on Facebook. I don't really care where the inspiration comes from. I'll take it. So if you've got a lot of imagery, maybe you'd want to do an image ad. I think of the Met Gala. I know it's a big event. Most of us weren't covering it, but let's say I happen to have that in my coverage suite. I would totally consider an image ad because look at all the beautiful clothing that I have to advertise. Let's say that I am an auto product reviewer. Nobody doesn't love the vroom vroom of a sexy car that you can't actually afford but would love to experience. Maybe that's a video ad. Let's say that I am a publisher and I'm about to launch my gift guides, because come on now, who isn't launching their gift guides already? Because apparently the holidays are just about here. I might try a carousel ad or a collection ad, especially if I'm doing e-commerce and trying to drive sales of specific products to bump up my bottom line. So really there are a lot of different ads. When you're thinking about what type of ad to select, really think about what you have. Right? If you don't make video, a video ad might be harder for you to make, and more importantly, harder for you to make well. If you don't have images, you're going to really have to think about a way to visualize what you're trying to sell, but really let the content drive what you choose. And there's a page on Facebook. When I send out a note afterwards, I'll make sure you get links to these pages so that you'll be able to check image specifications and anything else you need to know. And as things change from time to time, if you've ever got any questions about if things change, something looks weird, it's a great reference. I can tell you right now, I try to remember things, but there are a lot of things that I have to keep going back and referencing. And that's one really good thing about the Facebook advertising site, is it makes it very easy when I need to give myself a refresher. Okay. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of Facebook ads. I'd be curious to hear from any of you what you like, what maybe you don't like about these two ads. Anybody want to give me their thoughts and opinions? Otherwise, I'm going to have to start with Sunny, which I'm totally not opposed to either. All right, Sunny, let's hear it. What do you think of these two ads?
Well, okay, now you put me on the spot. The image with the lady, Slack make work better, is short, sweet, to the point, not as much to read. The image is more inviting. Sorry, but the publication looks a bit boring. It's not as inviting. It's more copy to read, but it at least is an invitation, and you can really clearly read the enjoy 12 weeks access.
All right.
That's my 10 cents.
I like it. Anyone else want to share their 10 cents on these two?
Please put it in the chat box and I'll call it out.
All right.
One of the things that I noticed in your presentation so far, Mina, is that you were saying that the images needed to be bigger. In this particular case with the young lady, it's kind of like the image, I'm not getting it with the unicorn. I'm sorry. Am I missing something, or the disconnect was okay?
I mean, see, I look at this and I see it as, this is a woman who has found freedom from fewer meetings, and that must feel like riding off into the sunset on a unicorn. So I see it as a cohesive message. But I think that's also something to keep in mind, right? Your audiences are going to look at things and they're going to see them differently. Ultimately, what you're going for is a few things that Sunny's highlighted here, and that is a clear message. Also something that's in line with the brand voice. I mean, The Economist isn't exactly the most sexy, fun brand voiced in the world. So I kind of expect a little bit of boredom from their ad, like if they were too sexy, if they had a unicorn on there, I would think something had happened to their social media editors. Maybe they've been, who knows? So that's another thing to think about, is this is really a way for you to reflect not just what you provide to your audience, but also your brand. And I think with Slack, I can see what you're saying about, well, maybe that unicorn's going to look a little bit small. But again, to me, it's riding off into the freedom of fewer meetings. So Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, Mina. I know you said with the images have as little copy as possible, but in this particular image that the economists used, it's not, it's still got copy on it. So that doesn't work against you in this particular case?
I don't know that it does. I'd have to look at their data. I think that the data that I've seen from Facebook is that ads with less than 20% of text tend to outperform. Doreen, I don't know if this would be more than 20% or how that's calculated, if you've got any insights there.
I think it's 20% on the image.
Okay.
So if they had a big picture that was covered with a bunch of text, I think that would
Okay.
get rejected.
Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, that there are, there are definitely going to be ways that you can incorporate text into your visual. I think it's more don't overload it. Which I think they do a pretty good job here. New year, new view, 12 weeks access. To me, that's pretty basic. Again, I think the voice is very in line with what The Economist would do as well. We've got one more example for you here. This is actually from Beyond the Media, Daily Harvest. Have any of you tried these Daily Harvest shakes? So they're actually pretty good. I will tell you that this avocado chocolate one is like a chocolate smoothie, but somewhat healthy, which blows my mind every single time. This is a different type of an ad. This one is a video ad. Now, we've all probably seen at least one food video somewhere on Facebook sometime. We all know that food content, those close-ups of food, we know that people really like those on Facebook. Here you've got an ad from Daily Harvest that takes advantage of that. It's a nice little video ad. And it also tells you, here's my value proposition for you. And it gives you some emoji, right? It's another visual way to think about what you're doing and to communicate in that visual way that really does dominate on certain social platforms.
Mina, is there a rule as to how much copy to actually put in the post that goes with this ad?
I don't know that there's a hard and fast rule. Correct me if I'm wrong, Doreen. But what I typically tell people to do is literally treat this as an editorial product. You wouldn't have something where people have to click and like really go in to see your message. My goal is always to give someone as much of the message as possible in the preview itself. Now, most people are looking at this content on their phone, so I try and keep it to like a couple of lines at most. My goal is to create an ad that I don't feel is overwhelming. And I'll tell you, there are some ads, it's like those long reads. If I see a story that's 8,000 words, I'm not going to look at it now. I'm going to file it away later. And there's like a 50% chance it will ever get read. So I would say, think about it in that regard here. If someone's scrolling through, what can you say and how fast can you say it to stop their thumbs in their tracks? Okay. So now we're going to talk about something a little bit more technical, ad campaigns versus boosted posts. On Facebook, there's a couple of different ways that you can advertise. You can either boost a post, which you've all seen if you've been in Facebook and managed a page. You can also set up an ad campaign. Now, there's a few different benefits that you get when you set up an ad campaign. You get some more options to do specific ad objectives. You get a little bit more creative control. You get advanced targeting capability and different types of placements. Do you want it to be in the news feed? Do you want it to be in Messenger ads, Instagram stories? If you're really a high volume advertiser, this is worth getting to know. Also, depending on what your goals are. Let's say that you're launching an app, being able to set up an ad that promotes and drives those app installs is probably going to be worth a little bit more money than just setting up an ad that brings people to your landing page from which they still may not download that app. So really you want to think about, am I trying to do more sophisticated ad? Am I really just trying to amplify this important work that I've done? Am I really trying to bring traffic back to my site? Do I want to have a long running campaign? Those are all the things that you'll want to think about when you're making that decision about ad campaigns versus boosted post. Boosted posts you do just right outside of Facebook. Ad campaigns you'll set up in Business Manager. But as you see
Mina,
here,
let me ask you a question about that boost versus doing a Facebook ad. And the reason is because I've heard, no against Doreen, against Facebook, but I've heard boosting is like, and this is a terrible term to use, but like pissing in the wind compared to the ad campaign. So Talk to me about the difference and where publishers should put their money to get the biggest bang for the buck.
So from everything that I've seen and in my communications with folks, boosted posts are not performing as well as ads set through ad campaigns. So nowadays, I would say that's really the best reason to do an ad campaign. I know that a lot of the brand managers and other folks that I've talked with, their attitude is, well, I can waste my money with a boosted post, or I can really have results with an ad campaign. So it looks like it's becoming more of an investment to really set up those ad campaigns. Doreen, is there anything you would add?
I think in the early days of boosted posts, it was sort of seen as an easy way to get some additional views or some additional impressions on an organic post. And those days are pretty much over, where you can put, $5 behind a post and have it seen by anyone meaningful. There's no targeting. You have no idea who's seen it. You get no real information about whether they took any action on your post.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to generate new subscribers, generate new leads, really get your message into the hands of the people who you want to see it, going a low cost ad campaign is usually better. Mina's going to walk through all this more in depth, but you can pick your audience, you can pick the region, you can pick some of their interests, and that's just a much better way of doing it than boosting it and letting the algorithm show it to whoever it wants.
Hoping and praying, Doreen.
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
boosting is.
Yeah, it is, because it's going to inject it into someone's newsfeed randomly, and so you're going to have that boost is going to have to compete with all the other things that are going on in that person's newsfeed.
So one could be called the shotgun effect, and the other one is more of a rifle approach, right?
Yeah.
I got to go redo this whole presentation now and work in that line. I was really, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mina.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth it to spend that time and that effort to reach the specific audience that you're going for. I think that, if you're going to spend the time, yes, that boost post button's right there, but if you're going to spend the time doing this, you want to think it through. And that's really the other thing, is you don't want to just push this button and say, hey, let's put some money out there and hope things go well. You want to actually think through what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it to get the result you want. Because I don't know about you, but I'm a small business and I hate spending money that doesn't provide a return on my investment. Okay, so as you're thinking about Facebook advertising, think about what you want to do. Are you a new page where you're looking to promote your page? You need to get followers for whatever reason. I know that followers are an interesting metric, but they are something that advertisers, funders, and sponsors do look at. So that is an option that you could use. You can also say that your goal is to get more website visitors. For most publishers, this is the goal. Your goal is to get someone from Facebook onto your website where they can become addicted to your content, where they can subscribe to your newsletters, where they can subscribe to your publications, where they can give you a whole bunch of money and support your advertisers and help you just build that Richie Rich money pit in the center of the news. You also want to be able to promote your business locally. Now, I think this is a particularly interesting option for local news outlets, particularly new ones, right? If you're covering a local geography, yeah, that fly-by-night traffic when, Yahoo or MSN or whatever your story gets aggregated and all these people who don't care about you over the long term or your advertisers over the long term come to your site. That's great. But ultimately what you need is you want your target audience, those people who really care about the local schools and the local communities you're covering. And for that, you've got options to promote your business locally. So whenever you're thinking about doing these ads, think about what the goal is. If your goal is to drive traffic, if you need to be able to fulfill ad impressions on a campaign, you don't want to promote your page. You actually want those people back to your site. Might cost you a little bit more, but ultimately that's the value for you, because if you grow your page or you reach a whole bunch of people in your audience, it doesn't matter if you don't get those people back to your website. And that's why the goal setting is such an important part of this.
Mina, before you move away from this particular slide, could you talk a little bit, because this can also be used. Many of our publications are legacy publications that have been around for years and years, and there are new audiences out there that may not have been exposed to the value, especially now with COVID, where it's cut into our distribution outlets as far as the churches and some of the other entities. This option could be a strategy or a goal that we could use for signing up for our e-edition. Isn't that correct?
Definitely. I mean, I think for legacy publishers in particular, it's really easy to think about the audience you have as the audience you want to serve. But growth comes from figuring out who that audience is that you've been neglecting or overlooking. So if I'm a local publisher and I'm trying to drum up interest in an e-edition in a place where I think, maybe my audience doesn't know me as well as I think, then maybe you really do want to build your brand or promote your business a little bit more locally, or really push aggressively those e-editions depending on how you've got them set up. I would think of it as, this is basically, I'm out there dating and I'm trying to date a new audience. This is my way to kind of amplify my Tinder ad and really get out there.
And in a lot of cases, we could use our stories, right, Mina, that we have. If
Yes.
we've got stories that, let's just say you're doing a story on a minister that you know is real popular, then you can, or a younger person who is under 40, and that's an audience that you're trying to attract. Can't you set this as goals and use this content to target those specific audiences?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there are some publishers that do that really well. If I've got the definitive story or something, or I happen to have this big story, this huge award-winning piece, you can definitely promote that as a means to show your value to a different audience. And I think a lot of publishers do that. It also is, a way that you can highlight some of that work that you find really important, really meaningful, and that drives that change within communities.
Okay, Mina, I'll stop asking questions. You can
No, I'm happy to answer them. All right, so a lot of people also ask what the metrics of success is, and they tend to hate it when I tell them it depends, but it really does depend. Your goals are going to determine your metrics of success. If you're looking to boost site traffic, you're looking for links back to your site, and you want to know the cost per click. Because when it comes to advertising on social, basically what I want to know is, how much does it cost me to get this person into my universe so that they can maybe subscribe from me and do all of these other things. Now, this person that comes into you from social, maybe they're going to read you from now until the day they die. They might be a long-term subscriber. They might buy a whole bunch of stuff from the affiliates you work with. They could really have value. So against that cost per click to get them in the network could be relatively low. But this is ultimately how you're measuring what you're getting against those goals. If you're looking to build a Facebook following, that would be likes. You're looking at your cost per like there. For reach, I tend to tell people that reach is not the first metric I look at. Sometimes it can be a meaningful metric for brand building or for advertising reasons, but I typically tell people to focus on building a following for their own brand, whether that's on Facebook or ideally back on their site. You know that a lot of publishers, particularly early in COVID, found that Facebook was excellent for driving email newsletter signups. So it was really kind of a way to get a bargain. I know one publisher who was, bootstrap one person outlet, all of a sudden started spending money on Facebook ads aimed at bringing in new email subscribers because it was cheaper than anything else that they did to drive up those subscriptions. So always worth keeping tabs on what the trends are and how things are evolving and how it fits into the larger landscape of life around us. Okay. So if you're looking to build your audience and brand, I've got a page here that I'm using as an example, a new travel site that I'm working on. You can see here what your ad might look like. And you see that I've got this little thumb circled. I think one of the things with Facebook ads is you can really coax people into taking that action that you want. I give you that thumbs up. I'm smiling at you. How are you not going to give me the thumbs up? So this is what a brand building ad might look like. When you set these up, you're going to get an estimate of the volume of people you can reach or the volume of likes you might be able to acquire, depending on how you're looking at this, and what your cost might be. So for this ad, I might say, let me put $5 a day behind this for a 5-day campaign and see how much of an audience I can build for this new site. And you can see you've got options to target based on location, age, gender, interest, and a lot of different things like that. So if you're specifically looking for a younger audience, maybe you'll target that way. If you're, I know I've worked with a lot of business publishers that are historically trying to build their audiences with women. So that's another way that you can target it. You've got a lot of different options to reach who you're looking to reach. Now, if you're looking to drive site traffic, if you look closely, you'll see that this ad is a little bit different. Instead of a thumbs up to like me, this ad tells you to click to learn more. This is an ad that's meant to drive site traffic back to my site. So this is aimed at getting people onto my landing page and getting them to sign up for a newsletter, which is really a great way for publishers to use these ads. Because ultimately what I want to do is I want to build my relationship, my direct contact with this particular audience member. And I know that newsletter readers tend to really become loyal customers. So this would be a really great way here. You can see that you've got the learn more call to action, an idea of how many people you'll reach, how many clicks you might actually get, and the URL that the site is actually pointing to. And again, local audiences, there are geographical targeting abilities within Facebook that will allow you to say, hey, these are the people that I'm trying to reach. This is where they are. So again, that's another thing that particularly local publishers can find valuable. So this is the big question everyone wants to know, right? How much money should I be spending on Facebook ads? And there is no answer to this question, which everyone really hates. But depending on your goal, you can spend as little as $1 a day, depending on your budget. I don't know that there even is a cap that you can spend. But it really depends. What I tell publishers is not to look at this as how much do I need to spend for success, but instead to look at it as how much am I able to invest in my future growth. So when you think of it that way, it's, I find it to be less daunting of a question, right? I've got, my travel site's new, it's not making any money yet. So I'm going to put in a little bit of money. It might change as time goes on, but knowing that I can start with as little bit as $1 a day and make even a tiny dent or tiny acceleration in what I'm doing organically, if I'm cash strapped, that could be really valuable to you. So don't think about it as I have to be able to advertise a minimum amount to make this worth it. Think of it as how much can I invest to get a return that accelerates and amplifies my organic efforts on Facebook.
So Mina, if you're just getting into this and you're trying to decide that question, okay, knowing that you don't have mega bucks, okay, and you're looking at, let's just say $50 a week for the beginning, which would be roughly about $200 a month. What's the expectation? Is there a realistic expectation you should have, or does it depend on so many factors that you can't determine it, or is it just rolling the dice and seeing when you hit a 7?
So I like your metaphors that you use. So with this, what I would do is I would actually say $50 sounds pretty spendy compared to some of the newsrooms that I've worked in, and I've worked in some great newsrooms, but still that's pretty decent budget. So you got about $200 a month. So what I would do is I would actually allot that out in a weekly amount. Think of it as like a steady drip over time, instead of saying, let me just put $200 behind this one post. So that's the first thing I would say. I would go through and I would set up those ads and I would look at the estimates that Facebook is giving you there, and then give yourself a benchmark, right? So if you go in and you say, okay, I've got, this $50 and I can drive 100 link clicks for that, then basically what your cost per user is there. So that's the way I would look at that, as like to figure out the basic cost of what you'll get for that $50 or $200.
Well, we've got a question from Dana Peck, and Dana is one of the people who's really sharp. She's at the Afro. You may know Dana already, I don't know, but the question that she's got in the chat is, how will using pixels enhance the analytics? And you may, for those of us who are not as swift and as learned as Dana, explain what are pixels and what does that have to do with the analytics and how we use the analytics to determine how our money is doing.
Right. So Pixel is basically a bit of code that's dropped on your site that allows you to say, here's where my people are coming from and how they're getting here. So it's really just one way to track a lot of different things. So typically it does give you, I think, a little bit smarter way of looking at analytics. But on the flip side, I have worked at organizations where if you want to put a line of code on the website, you basically need, you know, God to get the pigs flying, and that is just not going to happen. So, you know, that's also something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that privacy policies are changing. iOS policies are changing. A lot of different things are changing. I'm still trying to kind of get a handle of how all the changes are working out, but it does seem like that Pixel might not be quite what it used to be in terms of being able to provide that audience tracking.
So
Doreen,
what other options, considering that privacy change that I keep hearing about, but I don't quite grasp, is going to have, which I think is protecting me as a individual, but what other tracking devices are being introduced in lieu of the Pixel becoming not as effective, or are they still working on it?
It sounds like Dana might know more about this than any of us, but from what I understand, you can still use the Pixel. The information you receive back from it is limited. It's not as good as it used to be. So you used to be able to implement the Facebook, I'm just talking about the Facebook one, Facebook Pixel, and it would tell you that someone saw this post, then went to this place, then went to your site, then did a thing, signed up for subscription. That is no longer the case. You can set up a campaign. If you have a Pixel implemented on your site already, it will give you some of that information, maybe how many people came to your landing page, what actions they took on your landing page before they paid or before they subscribed or converted, but it won't necessarily tell you the full journey they used to get to your landing page.
So it sounds like the Pixel analytics have limitations now compared to what they used to have. But now, where do you get these pixels? Because I'm sure, I mean, in my case, I've done Facebook ads, but I don't know about the Pixel part. Where do I find this Pixel?
You can just Google Facebook Pixel, and we have a bunch of documentation. I can also drop it in the chat. It is, as Mina said, it does require either a web developer or someone with knowledge of how to work with code to add it to your site and to your campaigns. But once you've set it up, it's pretty automatic. You don't have to keep. I would also say, I don't know that it's going to continue to be supported in the way it was supported before. So if you're thinking about doing it, if you're thinking about implementing the Pixel, let me know first so I can connect you with someone on our team who was working on it and see what they.
So Doreen, my interpretation of what you just said is warning. Do not go down the Pixel route right now because it's being tweaked. And there may be some new stuff that's going to come out that might be of more value for you to accomplish your goal. Is that my interpretation?
Yeah, if you're already using it, it's great. You probably know what the limitations are and how you can continue to get use of it. If you haven't done it yet, then I would pause on that for now and wait until we see how all this privacy stuff is going to shake out.
Okay, and I will ask you about the privacy stuff at the end of Mina's presentation. Go ahead, Mina. We're back on track.
All right.
Aswad, you were right. I did have more questions.
Hey, that's okay. As a journalist, I would be really suspect if you didn't have questions. Okay, so a few best practices that I've heard about over time. And when you're setting up these campaigns, what you want to do is think about spending that ad budget over time or across a specific set of ads. I know that, newsrooms, when you have a budget, you're like, wow, cool, let me do this. Resist that urge. Really think through the campaign that you're building. Choose the length of your campaign. I think it's a little bit different than the way that we've thought about, media and publishing in general. Is I want to run this thing over X amount of time, which you typically want to do. I once spoke to Thinks, the company that makes the period panties, and they told me that they needed about 4 weeks of exposure to get somebody onto their website, which to me was an excellent lesson, because I think with publishers, it tends to be, I've had this Facebook ad running for a week and I'm not like, I don't have a million new readers yet. That is not how it works. Not only do you typically need to see the ad, you typically need to see it a few times before you actually click on there. I mean, think about how many publishers you probably go incognito mode to browse before you're actually willing to pay for that. Same kind of audience behavior that you see here. Now, as you're generally thinking more broadly about money and outcomes, realize that some goals and audiences are going to cost more. You want someone to click, that tends to cost more than if you just want someone to see your brand. If you're looking for a specific demographic, tends to cost a bit more than a broad demographic. If you're looking for a specific geographical audience, that also could cost you more or less, depending on the audience you're looking for. So there's a lot of unique factors. And that's why I think that for publishers just getting started, I encourage them to take a very testing mentality to their Facebook ads. Set up a few tests, try and figure out things like, what is my cost per user acquisition? How are people responding to my ads? You know, are people getting through to my site? There may be things that I need to be learning about my creative on my organic posts from my performance on paid posts. Back in the day when I didn't have a budget at Business Insider, we used Facebook ads for A/B testing, and it was brilliant. And you know, it was such a small amount of money that no one ever noticed that we were doing this campaign until it was done, and no one yelled at us for not asking permission. So there's lots of different ways that you can use this in your newsroom. Okay, now these are the pro tips that I've gotten working with people on Facebook ads and working on them myself. That copy quality and image quality matter. I can tell you that there's a huge difference when you have someone with an editorial eye look at these things, and when you actually put together something that, you know, really has that same quality as your editorial projects. People can feel it when you're giving them a hard sell, and that's often not the best approach to take here. You also want to incorporate the most appropriate CTAs whenever possible. Sign up, learn more. Any other buttons like that can make a big difference. You know, I'm getting bombarded by stuff all the time. Thousands of posts on my Facebook newsfeed, and then not to mention there's Instagram, there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn. I don't even remember what else I'm on, but I haven't even checked my email yet. The more we can do to help people see what it is we want them to do, the easier it is to get them to do the thing. And I think the biggest one is, don't forget your goal. Are you looking to drive traffic? Are you looking to build your audience on Facebook? Are you looking to drive subscriptions? Are you looking to drive donations? What are you really trying to do? That should be at the center of everything you're doing when you're designing a Facebook advertising strategy. Then another big thing, consistency is key. Spread that budget across time instead of spending it sporadically. Remember that, you know, things don't often surface instantaneously on Facebook. There's a reason that you'll see posts that might be a few days old or ads that might be a few days old. Go ahead and spread your budget across time instead of spending it sporadically, and give yourself a chance to learn and iterate throughout the process. And yes, I see Doreen is putting CTA equals call to action in there. Thank you for that. And with that, what questions do you all have about ads? And Sunny, I know we can start with you because I know you got a few.
Yeah, you know I do.
So let's start with you.
Now that we have this budget that I put in my mind of $200 a month. What should be the cost per sign up? What should be my goal in what it costs to get a person to actually sign up or to click that learn more about the website, trying to drive people? Is there a range of what I'm shooting for as a cost of this to this per click?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that costs tend to fluctuate across organizations. I think that one publisher that was a fairly small community publisher was saying they were seeing about 50 to 60 cents per user acquisition. So I don't know that there's a good average on that, but that honestly, if I have a group of publishers right here, I would love to work with you on figuring out what that is. So maybe we're able to find some information for other people. And the next thing to keep in mind is, remember when I told you about that newsletter publisher who got those bargain audiences early pandemic? That's the other thing to keep in mind is that, prices do fluctuate, and there are going to be times when these same people might be better bargains than others.
What
So-
kind of messages have you seen are the ones that produce the most emotion or engagement that trigger that action? Are there certain words or vocabulary pieces that you see work better than others?
I don't know that I've seen specific words or vocabulary. If there are magic words, Dorian, please tell us, and we won't let anybody know that you let us in on the secrets. But typically, it's kind of that classic advertising, right? Like, what's my value proposition? What do I get from doing the thing? Who are you? Why am I interested? It's really all of the same things you're trying to do through an organic post. You're just trying to do this and putting a little bit of money behind amplifying your efforts here.
So if I'm putting that $200 behind a campaign at $50 roughly a week, and how many posts make sense for me to do in that campaign during the week? I'm just trying to get an idea. Walk me through what that campaign should kind of look like.
Well, so if you've got $50 a week, I think you could do anywhere from 3 to 5 different posts. You could even do as little as like maybe 1 or 2 posts. I think it also is going to depend on what messages you have to get out, what you have to get out there. Like if you're doing a big membership drive, I might say do more posts and do more different types of posts. Give me a post that's targeted just at moms and goes out at 9 o'clock after their kids are in bed. Give me a post at someone who goes into the office, hates their job, and needs news to read all day while they sit there and hate their job. So think about those different types of audiences you're courting when you're making those decisions. And it's really just going to depend. Like if I happen to have a whole bunch of, gorgeous images, then maybe I might do more different types of posts because I have more of that content.
Okay, so then I'm hearing you say, particularly since many of we're publishers, and if we've got strong images that are either community images that we know will resonate, then putting those images in the post and extended invitation to come read more would be a nice way of generating that web traffic that we're trying to get. Or the covers of our publications may have a dynamic story on it that we could feature to say, sign up for the e-edition and learn more about this. Are we in the zone there, or am I on the
Yeah,
wrong?
definitely. I mean, like, let's look at it right now. You are in Houston, Texas right now. Am I correct? I am correct, right?
Correct. Mhm.
And you'll have some discussions going on there about a few
Now,
small
we got
issues.
some crazy folks down here. Don't get me started. Okay. this
Right.
is
So
not-
if you're gonna, let's say that you write the ultimate guide, you find the school that's doing all the COVID precautions right? And you do that story, that's the kind of story where like, that's valuable. That's the kind of thing that I would pay for, right? So that might be the kind of thing that you really want to advertise and show, hey, we did this investigation and we found a school doing it right. Here's what we can learn. Come back to our site, subscribe for more like this. Really show people the value that you have in their lives and realize that it can be one thing, right? What is it that makes you give? I find that for me to support a news outlet, it's often that I get to the end of a piece and I'm like, wow, this is impactful work. I need to support it. And this is also part of why I have so many random connections to local news outlets. But just think about what are those kinds of things that really gives your publication value in someone else's life. For a lot of local publishers, especially in places where you got a lot of crazy people, it's that good, valid information that speaks to me as a specific audience, especially when I'm in a place that may have previously been seen as a monolith and really overlooked large swaths of the population that could have been my audience.
Okay, I encourage our publishers to ask any other questions that they have, but one of the opportunities that I see, Mina, that you have opened up is many of the publications and the media that's represented within NNPA have unique stories that are not found anywhere else. And as a result, that is an opportunity to connect to the audience, to invite them in and to see more of what the Black press has to offer, whether it's their individual websites or whether it's signing up for their e-edition or whether it's, just come to our Facebook page and like us. those are 3 opportunities to help build your audience, which then in turn allows you to increase your advertising or marketing or branding pricing for people to reach the audience that you built up. So is that pretty much the key or the window of opportunity that the publishers need to take advantage of?
Definitely. I mean, like you can't go to every cocktail party on earth and introduce your awesome brand to folks, but you can kind of do that through Facebook. So that's really, you know, what I look at it as is if I don't know who you are, you're introducing yourself to me. So tell me those things. If you're telling me that my local publishers have ignored me for years and they have not really cared to serve me, but you are what I've been missing out on, that's huge. And that's the kind of thing that is going to be valuable enough for someone to take that action on through your Facebook ads.
Okay. Doreen, we've come to the end of our program. Floria, if you have any closing remarks, I don't know if you're still on there, but I want to thank everybody who has joined us today. Mina, especially you, and your dog is asleep, look there. But thank you for sharing the information. We look forward to next month. You are going to be joining us on the SEO, I think, basics to explain to us how we can actually use and Clyde, our producer, is going to show the slide of some of the upcoming Facebook webinars that we've got coming up. And fortunately, on October 21st, Mina is going to be back. I like her style. She makes it much easier to understand the basics. Doreen, thank you. That's a blessing, because some folks go, and it's like, what did I say? I didn't get jack from what that. But I want to say thank you, Mina, and invite all of our publishers to please join us back here on October 21st. Look for the invitation. Encourage some of the other publishers to come to these series because it helps you build your business better. And in turn, it will generate you more revenue. In November, we got newsletters, which are going to be really big. We got Dan Owen, who is the expert on newsletters. And then we have the Instagram Fellows and the Black Press, where we'll learn hands-on things that different fellows actually did in the Black Press that we can turn around and duplicate to grow our audiences. And then January, we look back on the year of what we've learned, I think in 2021. I think Doreen's got a couple of surprises either for December or January. We may mix some things up. I remember seeing an email from you, Doreen.
Yeah.
I want to tell Dana thanks for her question and for putting the pixel piece in the mix because that was new information for me. Go ahead, Doreen, you can close us out.
Yes, and thank you, Mina, again. Really quickly, I put a link in there to something called the Facebook Ads Library. That is a collection of all ads and the amounts that advertisers are spending on Facebook. So you can go in there, look it up by country, by company. If you're thinking of working with someone or you're going to do a branded content campaign with someone, you can type their name in there and see what ads they have actively running or how much they've spent on Facebook ads in the past. And that should give you some idea of how big, how small their spend on Facebook is. And also give you some ideas on creative. There may not be anything there for them, but it's a good resource to check once you are looking at Facebook ads. Then the other thing is we had a presentation in the Accelerator program, a really great one by a young woman who does events for Scalawag magazine. And she talked about in-person events, in virtual events, how they thought about it, how they approached different events, how they became profitable, how much money they spent, what kind of marketing they used. Really, really detailed. She's amazing. And she's willing to come to talk to you guys if you want her. So let me know if that's
yes.
She's so good. And she has such good energy. She talks about everything that she planned, everything she executed, how they did things, what kind of emails they used. It was just fantastic. So I'd love to get her in here to talk to you guys.
Well, we're flexible on the schedule. I think Dan is fixed and Mina is fixed, but if we could get her to come in on one of those, November and December, or December and January, I think that would be great because events are a revenue source. that opens the door for us to be able to do some different things and not just focused on advertising in the paper, but actually getting sponsorships and then reader revenue to pay to come to the events in some cases. So.
She talks a lot about how she converted event attendees into people who will donate, who will support, people who hadn't even heard about the magazine, but loved the people that they were bringing in for the events and what that cost them to convert them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Great.
We'll look forward to that being added to the agenda of new events that we have coming up. With that, I want to thank everybody from NNPA for joining us today and taking time out of your busy day. And Doreen, hugs and kisses for bringing this series. Mina, thank you for sharing, and we look forward to you being with us in October. Pluria, thanks for being with us on the panel part, just from the standpoint of making sure we got this right this time. And with that, Clyde, I thank you for being a great producer and making this all come together. With that, y'all have a good evening, and we'll see you next month. But, oh, I forgot. We do have a business insight next Thursday with none other than publisher Jim Washington, who's at the Atlanta Voice, who will be hosting Site Impact, and we'll be talking about eBlast and email and how you use that to generate money, using that for your clients. So with that, join us next Thursday for Business Insight, same time, same station, not the same link. So look for the invite from us. It will be a new invite because we are using a different platform. Okay, with that, I'll shut up. Have a good one.